Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. You know, as Governor Huckabee reminded us, we saw over the last couple days an incredible example of judicial overreach. But just to prove that there is an opportunity to laugh even in these very serious times, I saw yesterday, and I wanted to share with you today, a posting was made to a blog that sometimes I read, and it is about the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage as expressed in haiku. So I just want to read three of these for you. Kennedy's decision. Of course, he wrote for the majority in haiku. Hark, love is love, and love is love is love. It is so ordered. John Roberts' dissent. I support you all. No, really I do, but this isn't our problem. And Scalia's dissent, who I think Antonin Scalia spoke for so many of us. You're not a poet, Kennedy, and by the way, democracy is dead. Antonin Scalia reminded us that principles are most important when they are most difficult to uphold. You know, we know that we really believe in free speech, for example, when we uphold someone's right to speak their mind, even when we deeply disagree with them. And so I think what we saw with these activist judges reaching forward and telling us what they thought the law should be rather than what the law is, we saw an example of people giving into politics and forgetting principle. I was reminded of my dad. My father was a law professor for most of his life, but he ultimately became an appeals judge, a conservative judge on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, if you know anything about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, you know that being a conservative is kind of hard. And so I remembered sitting at my father's knee when I was a little girl, watching him watch the news at night. He used to yell at Walter Cronkite a lot. In the morning, I would watch him, because I adored my dad, I would watch him read the New York Times, and he would yell at the New York Times editorial page. And I was always say, Daddy, why do you read this if it upsets you so much? Carly, we have to know what the other side is saying. But the point is, he was a man of great integrity and character and conservative principles. I learned those at my father's knee and learned over the course of my life that our principles just work better. And so I was reminded of him. I was asked recently, and I was on Bret Baier's show on Fox News on Center Seat, and I was asked by George Will whether I thought judges should be strict constitutionalists, and I answered without hesitation, yes. He asked what kind of Supreme Court justices I would appoint as President of the United States, and I said, men or women like my father. From my mother, I learned one Sunday morning actually, I learned this. She looked at me and she said, what you are is God's gift to you, what you make of yourself is your gift to God. And I have learned throughout the course of my life that indeed everyone has God-given gifts. Most people have far more potential than they realize. And whether it is leading businesses or leading charities, I've learned that you can solve really any problem if you will unlock the potential and use the God-given gifts of the people that you are working with. Thank you. As you perhaps know, since I launched my candidacy for the presidency of the United States, I've gained something of a reputation for taking almost any question from almost anyone. And in that spirit, I went on The View recently. Some of you may know I had a bit of a discussion with Whoopi Goldberg about abortion. I think our side won, by the way. In any event, I was asked sort of halfway through my interview, when it was clear the ladies of The View sort of liked me, and I kind of liked them, I was asked, why are you a conservative? You know, in that tone. We like you. How can you be a conservative? Why are you a conservative, they asked. And I answered in this way. Because I know that no one of us is any better than any other one of us. Because I know every one of us has God-given gifts. Because I know each one of us has the capacity and the desire to live a life of dignity and purpose and meaning. And I know our values, our principles, and our policies work better to lift people up. And among other things, ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the battles, one of the fights we are going to have in 2016. And make no mistake, this election will be a fight, and I will take the fight to Hillary Clinton every time. But one of the fights we're going to have is the difference between conservatism and progressivism. You see, we believe no one of us is any better than any other one of us. Each of us is gifted by God. Progressives do not believe that. They believe, and you know this is true if you watch their actions, they believe some are smarter than others, some are better than others, and some are going to decide for others. I got asked another interesting question along the way. Since I launched my campaign, this was on a national interview one Saturday morning. I was asked whether my hormones prevented me from serving in the Oval Office, whether a woman's hormones would prevent any woman from serving in the Oval Office. Honestly, I was asked this. So, ladies, here's a little test. Can any of you think of a single instance in which a man's judgment might have been clouded by his hormones? Any at all? Including in the Oval Office. Hillary Clinton must not be president of these United States, but not because she's a woman. Hillary Clinton must not be president of these United States because she lacks a track record of leadership, because she is not transparent, and because her policies are bad for the people of this nation. Having traveled and lived and worked and done business and charity work and policy work all over this world, I know with certainty it is only in the United States of America that a young woman like me, graduating from college with a degree in medieval history and philosophy, all dressed up and nowhere to go, but extremely highly educated, in the middle of a deep, dark recession, I started my business career typing and filing and answering the phones for a 9-person real estate firm. I know with certainty it is only in this country that a young woman can start out typing and filing, go on to become the chief executive of the largest technology company in the world, and run for the presidency of the United States. That is only possible here. And it is possible here because our founders knew what my mother taught me. Our founders knew that everybody has God-given gifts. Our founders knew that everyone has potential. And they founded this nation on a visionary idea. It was actually radical at the time. And that radical idea was this: here in this nation, every individual has the right to fulfill their potential. And that right comes from God and should not be taken away by man or government. And because of that visionary idea, this nation has been a place, not a perfect place, but nevertheless, this nation has been a place where more things have been more possible for more people from more places than anywhere else on the planet. And ladies and gentlemen, here is the truth. I am running for the presidency of the United States because I believe we have reached a pivotal point in our nation. And the pivotal point is this: we have come to the point where the potential of too many Americans' lives and the potential of this great nation is being crushed by the weight of the government of this nation. We are tangling people's lives up in webs of dependence. We do not encourage them to move forward and find lives of dignity, purpose, and meaning. We discourage them. We tell them to lay back and let the government take care of them. We are now destroying more businesses than we are creating for the first time in U.S. history. And it's not the big businesses that are in trouble. It's the family-owned business, the small business, the community-based business. While Wall Street gets bigger and bigger, thousands of community banks are going out of business. And how long have we dealt with a border that's insecure? Not just a couple years, decades. How long has the Veterans Administration been a stain on our nation's honor? Not a couple years, decades. How long have we dealt with the fact that every single government agency has gotten bigger, more powerful, more complicated, more inept? Not a couple years, 40 plus years, ladies and gentlemen. 82% in a recent Fox News poll, 82% of the American people now believe we have a professional political class of both parties in Washington, D.C. that is more concerned with the protection of its power, its privilege, its position, and its perks than on challenging the status quo and getting the job done, and I agree with them. Here's the thing. People know something's wrong in this nation. They know we are losing that sense of limitless possibility that has always defined us. They know we are a nation divided when we should be a nation united. They know, we know, that the potential of this nation is not being fulfilled. What is leadership? Leadership at its core is about challenging the status quo. And the status quo of Washington, D.C. now must be challenged, ladies and gentlemen. But it's not just leadership that's required. Leadership, of course, is challenging the status quo, but leadership at its most profound is about something else. It's not about power. It's not about title. It's not about perks. It's not how big your office is. The highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others, and now we need a leader in the Oval Office who will unlock the potential of this nation. The potential of energy in this nation, we could be, we should be, we will be if I am in the Oval Office, the global energy powerhouse of the 21st century. The potential of the energy of this nation is being crushed by a lawless EPA, yet another example of the need to challenge the status quo. But this will also require citizenship, not just leadership, citizens to get re-engaged in the process of their government. And in that regard, we have a tool today in the 21st century that we've never had before. It's called technology. So you know what? I would go into the Oval Office on a regular basis in those weekly radio addresses or in those Oval Office addresses, and I would ask every person in America, take out your smartphone, please. Let me ask you a few questions. Do you believe that we actually should know how your money is being spent? Do you believe that we should ask every single government agency to justify every single dollar spent every single year? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. That technology exists, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think, since we passed a law quickly in response to pressure about the scandal of the VA, since we passed a bill that said we could fire the top 400 senior executives of the VA if they didn't do their job, do you think that might be a good idea all throughout the federal government? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Nowhere is leadership needed more than in the world today because, ladies and gentlemen, the world is a dangerous and a tragic place when the United States of America is not leading. The truth is, I know more world leaders on the stage today than anyone else running, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton, only I didn't do photo ops. I had a private meeting with Vladimir Putin, a private meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, a private meeting with the King of Jordan, private meetings with the leadership of Saudi Arabia or China or South Africa or Brazil. And let me tell you what I would do on day one in the Oval Office. The first phone call I would make is to Bibi Netanyahu, my good friend, to tell him this nation will always stand with the state of Israel. That phone call is important in and of itself, but it also sends a message to every ally we have around the world, because even our Arab allies who do not always agree with the state of Israel, but when they see us treating Israel in the way we have, they too worry about what a friendship with the United States is worth. The second phone call I would make would be to the supreme leader of Iran. He might not take my phone call, but he would get the message, and the message would be this: New Deal. Whatever the deal is you signed with the previous president, there's a new deal. And the new deal is this: until you open every uranium enrichment facility to full, unfettered, anytime, anywhere inspections, every nuclear facility to the same, we will make it as hard as possible for you to move money around the global financial system. We can do that. I would not make a phone call to Vladimir Putin. We have talked way too much to him and way too much to his foreign minister as well. But I would immediately begin rebuilding the Sixth Fleet, rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland, conducting regular, aggressive military exercises in the Baltic states, and I would arm the Ukrainians. And finally, with regard to ISIS, I would hold a Camp David summit, not to talk our Arab allies into a bad deal with Iran, but instead to say to our Arab allies who have been asking us for very specific kinds of help so that they can fight ISIS, which they know is their fight, what do you need from us? King Abdullah of Jordan has asked us for bombs and materiel. We haven't provided them. The Kurds have asked us to arm them. We haven't done so. The Egyptians have asked us to share intelligence. We are not. Ladies and gentlemen, we can defeat ISIS. Our allies will help us, but we must lead. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pivotal time in our nation's history. But we can solve every problem we have, and we can heal every wound. What we need now is citizenship. And what we need as well is someone in the Oval Office who actually understands how the economy works, who understands how the world works and who is in the world, who understands how bureaucracies work and what it takes to change them and cut them down to size. A leader who understands how technology works because it is a tool. It is also a weapon that is being used against us. And finally, and most importantly of all, we need someone in the Oval Office who understands the highest calling of leadership, which is to challenge the status quo when it must be challenged and to unlock the potential of this great nation. And so as I travel around this blessed and beautiful nation and talk to Americans of all kinds, I hold in my mind what we can be, what we must be, what we will be. And in my mind, I picture always two of the most powerful symbols of our nation's democracy: Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Picture Lady Liberty. She stands tall and strong. She is clear-eyed and resolute. She does not shield her eyes from the realities of the world or of our problems. But she faces outward into the world, which is the way America must always face, and she holds her torch high because she knows we are a beacon of hope in a troubled world. And Lady Justice, she holds a sword because she is a fighter. She is a warrior for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale in the other hand, and with that scale, she is saying, all of us are equal in the eyes of God, and so all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law and government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. And with that blindfold, I think she is saying to us that it must be true that in this nation, in this, the 21st century, it must be true, it can be true, that it does not matter who you are. It does not matter what you look like. It does not matter your circumstances. It does not matter how you start. Here, every American's life can be filled with the possibilities that come with their God-given gifts, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all.
Carly Fiorina. America's answer to Maggie Thatcher, Carly Fiorina. Now welcome back Byron York of the Washington Examiner. We call him the Washington Cross-Examiner this weekend.
Thank you so much for coming.
I feel like I'm on a game show.
I have to say, I think you cover more bases in a stump speech than anybody I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of stump speeches. But fortunately, there are a few things for questions left. I've been asking everybody to start out with about this Supreme Court thing. And you put out a statement after the decision. You were very critical of the court for doing this. But you also said that you believe that gay couples should receive equal benefits and rights from the government under the law. So putting aside the question of judicial overreach, which I think everybody in the room opposes, what is your opinion of gay marriage?
So I have always been supportive of civil unions because I don't think government should discriminate in the provision of benefits. When I was the chief executive at Hewlett-Packard, we provided benefits to same-sex couples. That is very different. That is very different from 5 Supreme Court justices saying to people, we're going to tell you what marriage is. And of course, throughout the millennia, and in every religion in the world, marriage has a very specific meaning. Marriage is an institution grounded in spirituality. It is the union of a man and a woman, and from that union comes life, and life is a gift from God. So, my own view is, I am sorry the Supreme Court took up this case. I think it was best left to the states and the people of the country to continue the conversation that has been going on for some time now in churches and synagogues and in living rooms and in town hall meetings. And now that this decision has come down, I think we need to focus all of our energies on ensuring that we protect the religious liberties and the freedom of conscience of those who profoundly disagree with this decision.
Okay. I am going to move on now to the economy. And if you listen to Republican campaigns over the years, most candidates base their economic program on a platform of Reagan-esque tax cuts. It was the first thing that George W. Bush did when he became president. And yet in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we have seen median income go down. We have seen the standard of living go down for millions of Americans. What about the economy today is different from what it was in that Reagan era that so many Republicans look on so fondly?
So I think the fundamental difference is this. Crony capitalism is alive and well now. And the reason for that is when you have big, complicated government, only the big, the powerful, the wealthy, the well-connected can deal with it. And so what we've done, let me just, as an example, yes, it's great to lower tax rates. Of course we should. It's ridiculous we have the highest tax rate on business in the world. But our tax code is now 70,000 pages. So guess what? If you're a small business, you really can't deal with that. I can't tell you how many New Hampshire business owners, I say New Hampshire because I happen to be there around tax day, I can't tell you how many New Hampshire business owners came up to me and said, I couldn't get my taxes done on time this year because I don't understand the tax code and my accountant doesn't understand it either. And by the way, the IRS said we can't answer your phone calls unless you give us more money. I mean, think about that. The point is, the more regulation there is, the more the real entrepreneurial engine of this nation gets crushed. So the entrepreneurial engine of this nation, the job creation engine of this nation, has always been small business, family-owned businesses, community-based businesses, and we are crushing them. Most people start out the way I did. Little 9-person firm. My husband Frank started out as a tow truck driver in a family-owned auto body shop in Pennsylvania. Those small businesses, community-based businesses, family-owned businesses create 2/3 of the new jobs and employ half the people. So when you are crushing them, you are crushing opportunity for the middle class. And so among the most important things we have to do now, it's not just about lowering rates, it's about radically simplifying the tax code. It's not about just having regulations we like, it's about hacking through this thicket of regulation that's been put on there. Why does Obamacare, just one more example, why does Obamacare have to be repealed? Have to be repealed. Not just because it's failing by every measure. Emergency room visits are up over 50%, insurance premiums are up over 35%, we're dumping people into Medicaid, there aren't enough doctors in Medicaid anymore. We're not serving people. But in addition to that, Obamacare is so many thousands of pages, literally tens of thousands of pages, that what do you see happening right now? Insurance companies consolidating, big merger announced last week. Hospitals consolidating, drug companies consolidating. The same drug companies, insurance companies that helped write that law, the bigger getting bigger to handle big government. That's what's happening. Dodd-Frank, 10 banks too big to fail have become 5 banks too big to fail. Thousands of community banks have gone out of business. So structurally, the bigger getting bigger, the wealthy are getting wealthier, the well-connected are getting better connected, the small, the powerless, the startups are getting crushed. And that means we're crushing opportunity for this nation.
Let me ask you one that's actually a little bit related to that and very, very simple. In your opinion, why did Mitt Romney lose in 2012?
You know, it's interesting. I worked hard for Governor Romney. I'm sure many of you did too. He's a fine, fine man, and he would have made a very, very fine president. If you looked at the exit polling data, what you would find is he won on every substantive issue. And he lost by 62 points on the question, cares about someone like me? Of course, Mitt Romney cared deeply. But I think that gap should be a reminder to us that we have to talk to everyone, that our tone matters, that our language matters. We cannot be judgmental, we must be empathetic. We cannot be angry, we must be optimistic. We have to reach out to all kinds of people. By the way, women are now 54% of the vote. In other words, ladies, we're not a special interest group, as Democrats would like us to believe. We're the majority of the nation now. But women disengage from the political process a lot, and we can't win this election unless we win with the majority of the people, but women disengage from the political process a lot because they say, I don't like how it sounds, I don't like the vitriol, I don't like the arguing back and forth, I don't like the shouting matches, and somehow nothing ever gets done. So tone and language and empathy matter, I think.
Now, again, related, the Democrats scored a lot of points against Romney, who presented himself as a can-do business leader who could take his skills to Washington. They scored a lot of points against him for layoffs at various Bain Capital companies. Why can't they do the same thing against you?
Oh, they'll try, absolutely, which is why I go on places like Morning Joe and everywhere else or Meet the Press, so that people can ask me those questions. So I led Hewlett-Packard through a very difficult time. The dot-com bust, post 9/11, the worst technology recession in 25 years. You will remember that NASDAQ, the technology-heavy stock index, took 15 years to recover to the highs that were achieved before the dot-com bust. And in those very, very difficult times, there were times I had to make some very tough choices. And yes, I had to lay people off. There is nothing harder to do than to tell someone they don't have a job anymore. And yet, we had to save the company in a tough time so that we could live to fight another day. Many of the companies that we competed against are no more. And so they lost a lot more jobs. But despite those tough times, in those 6 years, we doubled the size of the company to almost $90 billion. We quadrupled growth. We quadrupled cash flow. We tripled innovation to 11 patents a day. We went from lagging behind in every product category in every market segment to leading in every product category in every market segment. I'll run on that record all day long. And by the way, at the end of that 6 years, I got fired in a boardroom brawl that took place over 2 weeks, which is a reminder that when you lead, you must challenge the status quo. And when you challenge the status quo, you make enemies. I'm not afraid to talk about my record. I'm not afraid to talk about why we had to make some of the tough choices we did. Indeed, leadership sometimes is about making tough calls in tough times for which you are prepared to stand and be held to account.
All right, that's going to be it for us. Thank you very, very much.
Carly Fiorina, Washington cross-examiner, Byron York. Carly, thank you so much. Colorado loves Carly.